Now, no new taxes, we're told, will be imposed to meet Australia's commitment under the Global Methane Pledge. Now, Australia has formally joined more than 120 countries to sign this pledge, which aims to achieve a 30% reduction in methane emissions by 2030. Where does methane come from? Well, livestock, especially cattle, is the largest source of greenhouse gas in the agriculture sector, and it contributes to around 10% of Australia's total emissions. Climate Change and Energy Minister Chris Bowen has unveiled $5 million in new grants for projects designed to reduce emissions produced by animals and help meet that goal. He says primary industry will be encouraged, not punished, to reduce emissions. Let's go live now to the Nationals leader, David Littleproud. This is all about, well, cows farting, really, and barfing, isn't it, David? $5 million, is that enough?
Oh, well, look, in essence, the devil's always in the detail on this. And when you sign up to a pledge, let me tell you, you should look at the detail of that. And what this pledge also opens up the opportunity for financial institutions to make movements on farmers to make sure they meet these emission reductions. And while the government said they're not going to impose a tax or a reduction in herd size, they're also the same Labor Party that before the election said that there was no need to sign up to a methane reduction pledge. They backed us into COP26 saying, don't need to do that, let's have whole of economy emissions targets in terms of reductions, and we believe in that. But then to change the goalposts after is a trust issue that they've broken with Australian farmers now again, and making sure that we've got to appreciate that if you're going to achieve this and you want to achieve it through technology, asparagopsis is one of the ways, and one of the ways in which we as a government invested some research into. But let me tell you that the large-scale commercial operations that have already trialled this are showing that it's unviable. It's unviable. In fact, it's getting close to $2 per head per day. So you put an animal in a feedlot for 60 or 90 days, you add that on to a beast. I mean, the cost of meat is out of the reach of many Australians already. They can't afford to turn a barbecue on. Over $30 a kilo for a T-bone, a little old T-bone, over $70 for an eye fillet. There's plenty of households out there that can't see a light at the end of the tunnel in this cost of living crisis. And I'm just saying that if you're going to achieve this and you achieve this in any way apart from technology, someone ultimately always has to pay. And that's what's going to happen with consumers. They're paying now high prices. You exacerbate it with this, you'll pay more. Okay, so are you saying that this pledge, this commitment, this global commitment is going to make the price of cattle, per head of cattle, more expensive? Like, is it straight away? Because we've heard from Chris Bowen that it's $5 million as an incentive. It doesn't sound like all that much, but is that going to take the heat out of it? No, but see, if you don't have a solution to solve this problem, and while Chris Bowen says we're signing up with 120 other countries around the world, this is where they don't understand Australian agriculture. Our production system, because of our environment, is totally different to Europe. It's totally different to Northern America. So don't think that you can sign up and think that they're going to help us anyway. In fact, once you start signing up to this, you start putting yourself on the hook to make those targeted reductions. Right. And if you don't, David, then there's also mechanisms through financial institutions to push that on. But Australian farmers have been well ahead of the game here, cattle farmers included. Are we already achieving these standards anyway? No, not with methane. Methane is one of those nuts we haven't cracked yet. It's got a shelf life of about 12 years. And while asparagopsis, seaweed extracts were seen as a solution, at a commercial level, it's just not seen as commercially viable unless you want to pay for it. So if you want to pay for it, that's okay. But if you can't achieve it and then the world shifts the goalposts and you've already signed up to this and commercial markets, capital markets start to shift on you as well, then banks will start to impose that if you can't show that you've achieved this, then they may actually impose some of their moral compass on you, which they're doing to many industries already. So this is the risk that they open themselves up to, but it's a breach of trust. The Labor Party said they wouldn't sign up to this before the election. Now they're saying they are. You just worry around the next step is, and the cost of living crisis means people can't afford to turn the barbecue on in many parts of this country already, and they're out of touch in not understanding that. They've got to understand there are families out there that I don't think would have known the last time they bought an eye fillet or even a T-bone because they simply can't afford it. And that's because our supply is down at the moment. So if you put more pressure down on supply, it pushes prices up. So they're already high because we've got supply issues because of natural disaster, but more importantly because we don't have a workforce. Abattoirs are working around 63% of capacity. So there's no supply, so price goes up.
Okay, so what do you want to see in the budget tomorrow? We know what the Liberal Party wants to see. We heard from Angus Taylor last hour, but what is Nationals specific here?
Well, this is about preserving the infrastructure spend that the Nationals were able to secure. This is about making sure that supply chains are complete with the infrastructure they need, because invariably that reduces the cost of living crisis for families about being able to get food from a paddock to your plate. And if they're not there, then you pay the bill for it. And particularly when regional Australia has helped Australia pay the bills during COVID-19, when many industries were put under the doona, regional rural Australia kept on producing resources and agricultural product. So it's important that we have the infrastructure that complements that, otherwise you'll continue to pay. We think also we're pleased to see that the government's making commitment to childcare, but as I've been going around on our listening tour through regional Australia, on childcare, it's not just about affordability, it's actually about accessibility, availability. I mean, in Kempsey alone, just in Kempsey, there was 200 people on a waiting list in Kempsey alone.
Wow.
In Mildura, just one childcare centre had a waiting list of 200 people. I mean, regional women and families, for that matter, it's not just women, but families have a role to play in getting back to the workforce if they want to. They should have the choice. And so we're saying, don't have a city-centric policy to this. And I took this to the Job Summit when the Nationals turned up, being constructive and saying, just think about regional Australians. We need to shift the dial on availability. And that's also looking at family daycare, taking away some of the shackles there in a safe way, and then looking at the infrastructure spend in partnerships and even looking at HECS debts for those that do early childcare education university to get them into regional areas where we'd pay their debts. We're looking for doctors and nurses as well. So these are the types of unique ideas that we can funnel some of that money in to look after regional Australia, because that is a big constraint. Labor's a big constraint, but you know, security for women to get back into the workforce and families to get back into the workforce is not just about the affordability, and I think that just is a lack of understanding of the government. I hope that they shift the dial on the money they're going to spend and not look after those families of 350,000 plus. These are families, you know, making 80, 90,000 that just want to get back to work and need to get back to work but can't because there's no place.
Okay, we'll see where that ends up. Before I let you go, what has become a bit of a trend in recent weeks is athletes saying they don't want to be sponsored by various companies because they don't represent their values. One of them is Hancock Prospecting, other are fossil fuel companies. This is now across cricket, across AFL, across netball. Where's this all headed and what is your view on it?
Well, in the wrong direction, and I think good on Gina Rinehart for pulling that money. I mean, statements made by her father 35 years ago, ones that she purely doesn't sign up to, in fact, in her own actions have demonstrated that she supports Indigenous Australians through employing them, but also a lot of stuff that people don't actually see. And the fact that she's been demonised in the way that netball has demonised her, I think good on her. But I don't think we should take the moral compass of sports people to derive how this nation should operate. I think administrators should look to take control of that. And it's great for elite athletes to worry about it, but what about the little old netballer in Warwick or St George or Roma? That $15 million has been stripped away that would have gone into development of not just elite athletes, but those out in the grassroots right across the country that now have an uncertain future because the virtues of a few professional athletes that sit at the top of the rung have forgotten about what it is below them. And I mean, these companies are not doing anything immoral. They're not doing anything wrong. And in fact, many of them are not only looking after Indigenous Australians, but they're looking to the environment. They're looking to understand they need to reduce their emissions. So who is it for an athlete to decide whether a company should sponsor their sport or not? And they should think a little bit further down the totem pole than where the privileged position that they hold, and think about those grassroots kids out there across Australia, particularly in regional Australia, that are flat out being able to afford, their families are able to afford to pay the insurance to sign their kids up to cricket or football every year. I think this is the virtuous symbols that some of our elite athletes just need to take a step back and concentrate on winning on the playing field rather than getting involved in political debate.
Yeah, we'll see where it all ends up, but it seems to be trending in one direction at the moment. David Littleproud, always good to talk to you. We'll check in soon.
Thanks.